My name is Margaret Ellison. My son dressed me up like a beggar, planted me on a cold concrete bench, and filmed me not out of concern, but to go viral. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. It started with an old trench coat. He pulled it out of the closet, dusted it off like he was handling an artifact, and handed it to me like it was a gift. "Just put this on, Mom. It'll be fun," he said with that too wide smile of his. That smile I'd once loved on his 5-year-old face now sat crooked and insincere on the man he'd become. I held the coat in my lap. It reeked of mothballs and something darker like mildew, maybe even decay. Why, I asked, already feeling the tremble in my stomach. "For a video. Trust me, people eat this stuff up. You won't even have to say anything. Just sit there. It's a social experiment. I'm helping people understand homelessness." I should have said no. But when your son, your only child, looks at you with those eyes that once searched for your hand in the dark, it's hard to believe he'd mean to harm you. I'd raised him on love and library books, homemade soup, and bedtime stories. I'd sacrificed pieces of myself bit by bit so he could become whoever he wanted to be. Turns out he wanted to become famous. He called his channel Eli on the Edge, full of challenge videos, empathy experiments, and clickbait clips with bright yellow thumbnails and red arrows pointing at someone crying. And now, apparently, I was the next episode. "You want me to look homeless?" I asked. "No, not look. Just, you know, just wear this wig," he said, producing a tangle of wiry gray strands from a plastic bag, "and maybe slump a little when you sit. You'll be amazing." I stared at the wig. Eli. He was already filming, already framing me in the light from the dining room window. "Come on, Mom. You're always saying people don't see older women. Let them see you now. It's awareness." Awareness. Is that what it was when he had me crouch near the fountain downtown, surrounded by plastic bags filled with crumpled newspapers he called props? Is that what he meant when he whispered, "Don't look at the camera," and then stepped back with his gimbal pretending I was a stranger? He gave me a paper cup. "Just hold this. Don't say anything unless someone talks to you first." And just like that, I became the shell of someone I feared I could have become, someone I might have met during late shifts at the library, someone who spoke in mutters and stared at the ground. I sat. The bench was cold and chipped. The wind picked at the too big coat around my shoulders. And my own son, my Eli, filmed me from across the street like a nature documentarian. An hour passed. Some people walked by, glancing with guilt or suspicion. A few dropped coins into the cup. One child stared at me before her mother tugged her away. It wasn't just humiliating, it was violating. I saw myself reflected in a cafe window behind me. Unwashed, slumped, anonymous. No one saw the woman who'd once read Little House on the Prairie aloud every night. No one saw the librarian who'd guided teens to scholarship books and senior citizens to large print mysteries. All they saw was Eli's character, a faceless, nameless woman whose pain could be edited down to 5 seconds of pity. When he finally returned, camera hanging from his neck, he looked thrilled. "That was perfect. Seriously, Mom, you nailed it." "I want to go home," I said. He didn't hear me. He was already checking the footage. God, the way that lady dropped the coin and looked back, pure gold. I'll subtitle that. I stood up, cup still in hand. "Eli." He looked up. "What?" "I'm not doing this again." He blinked as if I'd said something incomprehensible. "You don't get it. This is good, Mom. You helped me today." I didn't respond. I just walked to the car. I sat silently on the passenger side while he drove. He hummed along to some pop song, fingers drumming the steering wheel like he hadn't just erased my dignity for content. When we got home, he uploaded the footage before even taking his shoes off. He called the video "I Met This Grandma on the Street." What happened next broke me. The thumbnail was me slumped on the bench with tears photoshopped onto my cheeks. I wasn't crying, not then. But I would. Hours later, I sat in bed with my laptop open, watching the views climb like a fever. 50,000, then 80, then 120. The comments flooded in. This made me cry. Thank you for doing this, bro. We need more people like you. God bless her soul. Is she still out there? Did you help her? I stared at the screen. My name wasn't mentioned once. I had become content. A prop. A tool. And my son, the boy I'd once cradled against my chest, whose first steps I cheered, whose graduation speech I cried through, had turned me into fiction. There was a knock on my door. You okay? Eli asked. I closed the laptop. Yeah. You were amazing. Seriously. He didn't see the way I was curled into myself. He didn't see the shame coiling around my ribs. He just smiled and said, Tomorrow we'll do part 2. People want an update. Tomorrow. I swallowed my nausea, nodded faintly. But something in me cracked that night, just the tiniest fissure. And once a crack begins, it never stops spreading. The next morning, Eli was already setting up the tripod before I even came out of my bedroom. He had a fresh cup of coffee in one hand for himself and a worn canvas bag full of thrifted clothes in the other. Morning, Mom. You were incredible yesterday. The video hit 200K overnight. He looked like a kid on Christmas. Except the present he unwrapped was me. I stood there in my robe, the floor cold beneath my feet, watching as he laid out the costumes on the kitchen table like props for a school play. Mismatched shoes, a flannel shirt with holes, a knit cap that looked like it had been chewed by rats. He wasn't asking, he was preparing. I thought today we could go to the underpass, he said, excitement bubbling in his voice. There's this really gritty vibe there. I'll get you some hot soup to hold maybe a cardboard sign. Something simple like, anything helps. I stared at him. Eli, we need to talk. He didn't stop moving. Yeah, sure. Talk in the car, okay? The light's good before noon. I'm serious. He froze then for the first time, actually looked at me. What's wrong? What's wrong? I repeated, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. You're making me pretend to be homeless. You're letting strangers pity me and they don't even know who I am. You're using me, Eli. He laughed, actually laughed, like I'd told a joke. Mom, come on. It's awareness. It's storytelling. No, it's exploitation. He exhaled sharply like I was being dramatic. You don't get it. This is how things go viral. It's performance, okay? We blur the line between real and story. That's what keeps people watching. I'm not a character. You're my mom. You said you wanted to spend more time with me. That one cut deeper than I expected. I swallowed hard. And is this what that looks like? Me in a torn sweater while you rake in comments and add money. He looked annoyed now. Wow. So now I'm the villain because I'm trying to make something of myself. After years of working crap jobs and being invisible. Invisible, I whispered. You made me invisible. He scoffed. You don't understand how content works. I walked away. I went back to my room and shut the door. But an hour later, I was back on the street. Don't ask me why. Maybe it was habit, a mother's reflex to support her child. Maybe it was the echo of his voice as a little boy calling me mama and reaching for my hand. Or maybe I just didn't want to believe he'd really let the world see me like this unless he had a good reason. This time, he had me sitting on a tattered blanket near a bus stop. He gave me a sign. Abandoned and forgotten, but still hopeful. It was poetry, he said. The camera rolled. People walked by, some avoiding eye contact, others glancing curiously. One man offered me a sandwich. A young woman dropped a $5 bill into my lap. My cheeks burned. I felt myself shrinking, folding into a shell of someone I didn't recognize. The worst part, someone filmed me with their phone. Not Eli, a stranger. I saw them do it, barely trying to hide it. A 30-something man in gym shorts and a ball cap. He looked amused. That night, I found the clip online, not from Eli's channel. It was on a Reddit thread. This poor lady broke my heart. Thousands of comments. People speculating about my backstory, guessing where I used to live, whether I had kids. She looks like someone's grandma. How can people just walk past her? I hope she finds her way. I'd give her a blanket if I saw her. I wanted to scream. I was not lost. I was not forgotten. I was Margaret Ellison. I'd built a life taught kids to read, organized fundraisers, held bake sales and book drives, ran the entire community literacy program for 10 years. I'd raised a child, paid off a mortgage, grieved a husband. And now I was a footnote on someone else's highlight reel. Eli burst into my room with a grin. Mom, the new vid hit 500K in 12 hours. You're blowing up. He actually high-fived me. Like this was a game we were winning. I don't want to do this anymore, I said flatly. His smile faltered. You're kidding. No, I'm not. But people love you. You're the heart of the story. I'm not your character, Eli. He frowned. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked for this? I'm finally getting noticed. People DM me saying I inspire them. At what cost? He shrugged. No one's getting hurt. I am. That silenced him for a moment. Then he crossed his arms and said, So what you want to go back to? Sitting at home watching the news. Being forgotten. You said you wanted purpose. Not this way. He looked at me. Really looked this time like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he muttered something I'll never forget. You were already invisible. I just gave you a spotlight. He left the room. And I sat there cold, humiliated, and more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Not because of the strangers, because of my son. 2 days later, I stopped going outside. Not because I was sick, because people had started to recognize me but not as myself. They didn't see Margaret Ellison, retired librarian. They saw her, the homeless grandma from the internet. I first noticed it at the grocery store. I'd only gone in for a carton of eggs and some tea. I was still in my regular clothes, clean hair-combed shopping list in hand. But a teenage girl followed me down the soup aisle. Are you... Wait, you look like that lady. From TikTok. The sad one. I froze. She took out her phone and started recording. No permission, no greeting. You were in that video, right? With the guy who helps people. What's it like to be homeless? Are you okay now? I left the cart and walked out. My hands were shaking. By the time I got home, the girl had already posted it. My face confused mid-turn, caught off guard, was all over her story. The caption read, OMG, she shops at the same store as me. Homeless grandma. That night, Eli was thrilled. He waved his phone in front of me. Mom, you're trending again. That girl's video got 1 million views in 5 hours. You're basically an icon. I didn't agree to that, I said. You don't need to. It's the internet. You're a public figure now. My head throbbed. I didn't ask to be one. He just laughed like I was being unreasonable. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls. 2 from people I barely knew, former neighbors, distant cousins, and 1 from someone I hadn't heard from in over a decade, Linda Harrow, my old supervisor from the library. I listened to her voicemail. She sounded kind, concerned. Hi, Maggie. I saw something online and... Is everything okay? You can call me if you need help. I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't lie. But the truth sounded too absurd to say out loud. My son turned me into a performance, and the world believed it. He posted a new video that night. This time it was called I Surprised My Homeless Mom with a Makeover She Deserved. It featured me against my will sitting in a chair at a salon. I'd only agreed to go because he said we were getting out of the house. Suddenly there was a stylist, a ring light, and a camera. I had no idea he was filming until I saw the finished product later that evening. He added sad piano music, overlaid text. She's been through so much. Today I gave her back her dignity. I stared at the screen in disbelief. He cut out every moment of me asking him to stop, every expression of discomfort. He edited in fake tears. Mine. The comments poured in. I'm crying. This guy is an angel. She looks beautiful now. God bless you for helping her. Beautiful now. What did they think I looked like before a stain? The next day, a woman knocked on my door. She held a plastic grocery bag and wore a gentle, apologetic smile. Hi, she said. I recognized you. I saw the videos. I just wanted to bring you a few things. You're so brave. I stared at the bag. Apples, a blanket, some cough drops. She thought I still needed help. Because the version of me Eli had created, the broken, voiceless, pitiful mother, had become realer than I was. I thanked her, took the bag, closed the door. Then I sat at the table and cried until my ribs hurt. Not just for me, but because it hit me then this wouldn't stop unless I made it stop. Eli didn't think he was hurting me. That was the most terrifying part. In his mind, he was telling a story, a noble one. He was rescuing me from poverty I didn't have, suffering I didn't deserve, in a narrative that didn't belong to either of us. He had twisted reality into something beautiful for himself, and the world clapped. Later that week, he asked if I'd be willing to reunite with a young fan on camera. Some teenage influencer wanted to meet the grandma who inspired her to start volunteering. I asked him, "What do you think will happen when the truth comes out?" He looked confused. "What truth?" "That I was never homeless. That I live here. That you made it all up." He waved it off. "Mom, no one cares. People just want to feel things. You gave them that." "I didn't give them anything. You took it." He rolled his eyes. "You're overreacting. I'm being erased." That silenced him for a beat. But then he leaned back, shrugged, and said, "Well, maybe that's better than being ignored." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the boy I raised. This wasn't about helping people. It wasn't even about me. It was about him. And the monster of attention he had fed was now too big for either of us to control. That night, I opened a secret folder on my old laptop. I started saving copies of everything: videos, posts, comments. I recorded our conversations. I dated them. I labeled each one. Because I knew where this was going now. And I was done letting him be the only one holding the camera. I started locking my bedroom door at night. Not because I feared Eli would hurt me physically. No, that kind of threat was never his style. He didn't strike with fists or shouts. He used the edit button. He used pity. He used me. And I finally understood that keeping myself safe meant guarding what little remained of my identity, and my silence for now was protection. But silence can only last so long. It happened the following weekend. I came downstairs to get a glass of water and found him setting up another scene right in our living room. Camera on tripod, lighting ring facing the sofa, a second camera rig on the coffee table. He was pacing, rehearsing lines to himself. "Ever since I brought my mom in from the streets, we've been working on healing. Trauma's real. And today, I want to show you how far she's come." He turned, startled by my presence. "Mom, hey, can you sit down for a second?" "No, I just want to film a check-in. Like a little update. Nothing dramatic. You don't even have to talk. Just nod when I do." "No." He blinked. "What's going on?" I said, "No, Eli." He laughed, that nervous twitch he always had as a kid surfacing again. "You're just tired. I get it. We'll do it later." "You're not listening to me," I said slowly. "I'm not participating in this anymore. None of it. Not the makeovers, not the sympathy montages, not your healing journey." The mask slipped from his face. "What is this really about? You don't want me to succeed. You want me to go back to working the deli counter like a loser." "This has nothing to do with your job," I snapped. "This is about decency. You've stolen my dignity and sold it to strangers for ad revenue. That's not success. That's betrayal." He turned away, jaw clenched. I stepped forward. "I want you to delete the videos. All of them." He whirled around. "Do you know how much money those videos made? Do you have any idea I paid off half my credit cards because of you? You paid off debt by turning me into a lie." He looked at me like I was speaking another language. "This is how the internet works," he said, voice rising. "People want authenticity, but they also want drama. They don't care if it's scripted, if it feels real. You gave them real. I gave you nothing," I said. "You took it." We stared at each other, silence falling between us like ash after a fire. Then, as if flipping a switch, he softened his tone. "Mom, I didn't mean to hurt you. I really didn't. You know I love you, right?" I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "Let's just do one more. Just one more video, I swear. Then we can pivot the brand. Maybe cooking content. Or charity drives." "I'm not content." He sighed. "If you really cared about me, you'd help me. This is my shot." There it was. The emotional blackmail dressed in the language of dreams. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard him mutter, "People would kill for this kind of attention." That night, he posted a new clip without telling me. It was an old recording one I didn't even remember him taking. A shaky shot of me sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket sipping tea. The caption read, "She still struggles, but we're making it day by day." He overlaid melancholic music and cut in footage from past videos, adding fake text again. Sometimes healing isn't linear. The comments flooded in full of strangers expressing sorrow, inspiration, even admiration for his dedication as a son. I felt sick. The lies weren't slowing down, they were evolving. I confronted him the next morning. "I told you not to film me." He shrugged. "It's already out. No point taking it down." "You have no right." "It's my house too." My voice cracked. "You're using me like a tool." His tone turned cold. "You don't own your image anymore, Mom. You gave it away when you agreed to the first video." That line stayed with me long after he left the room. "You don't own your image anymore." As if I had signed something. As if a mother's trust was a license. As if his camera had stolen not just my likeness but my agency, my worth. Later that day, I saw the worst video yet. He had edited together a before and after montage, with dramatic zoom-ins of my face in ragged clothing paired with a final frame of me crying in the salon chair. Except I hadn't been crying from joy. I'd been crying because I realized he had filmed me again without my consent. He titled it, "From the Streets to Strength. My Mom's Journey." The word strength was written in bold gold letters across the thumbnail, and my image was now a permanent part of a lie. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened that secret folder again and started cataloging everything, not just what he posted, but what he didn't. I screen recorded his Instagram lives. I downloaded the comments. I started a written journal time-stamped noting every conversation and every time he ignored my refusal. Because I had made a decision. I wasn't going to argue with him anymore. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to expose the truth. Eli got his first brand deal the next week. He came bursting into the house like he'd won the lottery, waving a glossy gift box in one hand and a contract in the other. "Mom, you won't believe this, a lifestyle brand just reached out. They want to sponsor the next video." I was sitting on the sofa with a cup of tea staring at the same page of the same book I hadn't been able to finish for days. I didn't even look up. "They want to do a collab," he continued. "Send you a blanket, a care package, maybe one of those feel-good surprise deliveries, and they'll pay." I finally met his eyes. "They think I'm actually homeless." Not exactly homeless, more like in recovery. The redemption arc. People love that. I set my tea down carefully. "And what do you think, Eli?" He paused. "I think it's smart. I think it's our next step. Our—" "Come on, Mom, don't make this weird. It's just a video." "It's never just a video." He scoffed, frustrated now. "Why can't you just go along with this? You act like I'm dragging you through mud. I'm making something here. Something people care about. You're building a career on a lie." His face tightened. "Then make it the truth." I stared at him. "What?" He shifted. "Look, I'm not saying you should live outside or whatever, but one night, just one, for the video. We film you spending the night on the street. People will flip. It'll be the most real thing we've ever done." He said it like he was asking me to join him for dinner. "You want me to sleep outside?" I whispered. "For one night. We'll make it look authentic. You can wear the old coat again. I'll be nearby the whole time, obviously. You'll be totally safe." My mouth went dry. "Safe from what from you?" He flinched at that. "I'm your mother, Eli," I said slowly, "not a prop." He didn't respond. Just turned away and muttered, "Think about it." But I didn't have to. I already had. That night, I opened a separate folder on my laptop. One that lived on a USB drive now. Password protected. I titled it simply Truth. I organized it by date. I added the footage of him scripting his monologues. I added the screenshots of his text messages calling me the asset. I even clipped out the email he'd left open on his desktop, the one from a brand representative asking if I'd be willing to shed a few tears for the shoot. And then I waited. 2 days later, Eli came into my room holding a cardboard sign. "Look," he said, excited again. "I made this. It's perfect for the next video. He held it up. In block letters it read, I raised a son and he saved me. I stared at the words. He wanted to make himself the hero. He wanted to trap me in a narrative where I owed him for my own fake rescue. I'm not doing this, I said quietly. Fine, then I'll find someone else. I blinked. What? He shrugged. There are plenty of actors who'd do it for a cut of the views. No one needs to know it's not you. I've got enough footage. I can stitch it together. You'd replace me if you're not going to be grateful. Grateful. You don't get it, Mom. You're getting old. Before this, no one remembered your name. Now you have fans. People pray for you. You matter again. I stood slowly, blood pounding in my ears. Get out of my room. He hesitated. You don't mean that. I do. His jaw twitched, and for a moment I thought he'd apologize. But he didn't. He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass in the window. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop instead and sent my first email. Not to the police, they'd done nothing when I visited last time. This time I wrote to a local journalist. Her name was Dana Calloway. She hosted a web segment called Truth Underneath, where she investigated stories that blurred ethical lines, online scams, social justice hoaxes, influencer deception. I wrote simply, my name is Margaret Ellison. I'm the woman in the homeless mom viral video series. My son staged all of it. I have proof. Can we talk? I didn't expect an answer that night, but I got one within hours. Yes, I've been following the videos. I had a feeling. Can you meet? We arranged to talk the next morning. At a library, fittingly, one I used to volunteer at. I packed the USB in my purse. I didn't tell Eli where I was going. When I walked into the library, Dana was already waiting, mid-30s. Sharp eyes, no nonsense. I slid the USB across the table and whispered, this is everything. She plugged it in, watched, scrolled. Her expression darkened. He really did this to you. I nodded. She didn't ask for drama. She didn't ask for tears. She asked for the truth. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was finally listening. Dana didn't waste time. The moment she saw the footage on that USB, her professionalism kicked in like a reflex. She asked precise questions, took notes, requested permission to use clips, all while reassuring me with a calm I didn't know I needed. This isn't just a bad moral choice, she said. It's calculated deception. And because he monetized it, there could be financial consequences. I sat across from her in that small library conference room, palms resting flat on the table. I felt oddly exposed, but not in the way Eli had made me feel. This time I was choosing it, telling the truth on my own terms. I didn't think anyone would believe me, I whispered. They will, she said without blinking. Especially if we tell it right. We agreed on a plan. She'd produce a short expose under 5 minutes, just enough to show the manipulation, the monetization, and the emotional damage. She'd include side-by-side comparisons of Eli's edited clips and the raw footage I had saved. The angle wouldn't be revenge. It would be reality. That afternoon, I returned home to find Eli filming himself in the kitchen. He was chopping vegetables, monologuing to the camera. Since taking care of my mom, I've learned so much about patience and compassion. That's why I'm partnering with Heart Baskets this month to deliver meals to those in need. He lifted a branded tote bag into frame. I watched silently from the hallway, equal parts nauseated and awed by his ease, the casual way he performed sincerity, the confidence with which he assumed no one would question him. Later, he found me folding laundry in my room. I got us another sponsor, he said, sitting on the edge of my bed without asking. Meal prep kits. They want to send us a year's supply if we shoot a family dinner scene next week. You up for that? I didn't answer. He mistook my silence for fatigue and patted my hand. It's okay. You don't have to talk in it. Just sit with me. Smile. Pretend we're happy. I pulled my hand away. I'm not pretending anymore, I said. He frowned like I'd broken some unspoken rule. I turned away. You'll see soon enough. He left the room without a word, and I waited. 2 days later, Dana messaged me. It's ready. Posting tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp. She sent me the link in advance. I watched the final cut alone at 1 a.m., huddled beneath a blanket in the living room. It began with Eli's most popular clip, me on the bench. Hunched. Defeated. The piano music swelling. Then the title card. The truth behind the viral homeless mom videos. Cut to raw footage, my face mid-sentence saying, "Eli, stop filming." Another cut, him whispering, "Don't worry, they'll love you for this." Then the overlays, charts of ad revenue. Brand contracts with my name never listed. My image used in thumbnails I never approved. Dana's narration was steady, unemotional. What began as a so-called social experiment became a long-form performance, without consent. By the end I was trembling. Not because it hurt, because I felt seen. The next morning the video dropped, and the storm came. Within 2 hours it was trending. Thousands of comments flooded in, but this time they weren't applauding. "This is disgusting." I followed Eli for months. "I feel duped." "How could you do that to your own mother?" She looks so broken in the raw footage. I want to hug her. I didn't respond to any of them. But I read everyone. Eli didn't come downstairs until almost noon. I heard the thump of his footsteps slower than usual. When he appeared in the doorway, he looked pale. No camera, no script. "You saw it," he said quietly. "Yes." His voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "They're tearing me apart." I sipped my tea. "They're seeing the truth." "I didn't mean to hurt you," he whispered. "But you did." I thought I was helping. "No," I said, setting the cup down. "You thought you were the main character." He dropped onto the couch, head in his hands. "My sponsors pulled out. One of them's asking for their money back." I didn't gloat. I just watched him sit there, the reality finally catching up. "This is all I had," he said. "The channel. The audience." "You had a mother," I said. "You had a family." He didn't answer, just sat in the silence. And I realized something strange. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. That night, I received a message from Dana. "Would you like to do a follow-up? Tell your story in your own voice." For a long time, I stared at the blinking cursor. Then I typed yes, because it was time people saw me, not the character, not the prop, just me. It was strange being recognized again, but this time, not for a lie. 3 days after Dana's expose went live, I stepped into a bakery near the park intending to buy a loaf of rye and disappear. The woman behind the counter looked up, paused, and her eyes softened. "You're Margaret, right?" I hesitated, ready to brace myself. But she added, "I watched your interview. You didn't deserve any of that. Thank you for speaking up." She refused to let me pay for the bread. I stood there, stunned, bag in hand, realizing the tide had fully turned. Back home, Eli's door stayed closed most of the day. I could hear him pacing sometimes, muttering to himself occasionally, typing in fits on his keyboard. At night, his voice would rise in panicked fragments, phone calls with collaborators, sponsors, maybe even lawyers. I didn't ask. He didn't offer. We had become two shadows in the same house, orbiting each other in silence. But I had changed, and so had the world around me. The interview with Dana was short, just 10 minutes, but it traveled fast. The format was simple. No makeup, no dramatics. Just me sitting in a quiet library room looking into the camera. I told the truth. I told them how it began with a coat. How I sat on a bench for a son who had promised me it was just awareness. How I watched my own image morph into a viral story, all while losing pieces of myself. How I had to reclaim my voice because no one else would. They called it the quietest takedown of influencer culture yet. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my name back, my identity, my dignity. People wrote in, not just online, but by post, actual letters from women across the country who said they had been used by family, dismissed by children, rewritten by the people they loved. I spent hours reading their words, hand on my heart. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. But not everyone was kind. There were messages calling me ungrateful. People defending Eli, saying, "At least he included you," or "Maybe you were invisible before he put you on camera." One man said, "That's what parents get for living off their kids." It stung, of course it did. But I didn't respond, because I had already said what mattered. And Eli, he was unraveling, One afternoon, I came downstairs to find him sitting at the kitchen table laptop, open eyes red-rimmed. He didn't look up. They banned my TikTok. I said nothing. My YouTube got demonetized. Instagram shadow banned me. Sponsors won't touch me. Still, I said nothing. I didn't think it would go this far. Now I did speak. That's what happens when you trade the truth for views. He looked up, eyes burning with something between guilt and desperation. What do I do now? I didn't have an answer for him. He wasn't asking as my son. He was asking as someone who'd built their life on a stage that had collapsed. I'm not your audience, I said gently. He swallowed hard. People hate me. They don't hate you, I said. They hate what you did. He looked down again. Later that night, I heard him crying in his room. I didn't knock. I didn't go in. Some part of me wanted to. Some small maternal flame still glowed in my chest, the part that remembered the boy who used to hug me tight when he was scared. But I stayed in bed. Because he needed to feel this. He needed to sit in it, the silence, the fallout, the truth. A few days later, I received another email from Dana. A producer from a documentary studio had seen the interview. They were doing a series on truth narrative and internet deception. Would I consider being part of it? This time, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I replied. Because if my story could become a weapon in someone else's hands, it could also become a torch, lighting the way for women like me. For mothers whose voices had been edited out. For elders whose truths were repackaged and sold back to them as pity. I wanted people to understand what happens when your story is stolen. And more importantly, what happens when you take it back. The documentary crew arrived quietly, respectfully, nothing like Eli's setups. No ring lights, no exaggerated scripts. Just a small team of 3, a camera operator, a sound tech, and a young woman named Lena, who directed with the kind of stillness I instantly trusted. They asked if we could film in my home. I said yes, but only in the dining room. Only where I felt grounded. As they set up, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror above the fireplace. It surprised me how composed I looked. Not glamorous, not dramatic, just solid, present. A woman with edges and history no longer flattened into someone else's narrative. Lena sat across from me. "We're not here to make you a symbol," she said gently. "We're here to let you speak." That was all I needed. I told them everything. About the bench, the coat, the fake makeover, the night Eli asked me to sleep on the street. I spoke slowly but clearly, letting the words settle in the room before moving on. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply told the truth without music edits or sympathy overlays. I told them how I became invisible in my own life, until being forced into a spotlight made me realize I had something to say after all. Afterward, Lena thanked me. "You have more strength than most people I've interviewed," she said. It wasn't a compliment. It was recognition. Later that evening, I came into the kitchen and found Eli standing over the sink, staring at a broken glass in his hand. His face was pale, drawn. "I saw the camera crew," he said. I said nothing. "You're filming something now?" "Yes," I replied. "A documentary. About me?" He gave a bitter laugh. "Funny how that works." "It's not revenge," I said. "It's correction." He turned to me slowly. "You think I don't know what I did? I don't think you've even begun to understand." He rubbed his face, the fatigue in his bones finally surfacing. "Everything I built is gone. My channel. My income. I can't even walk outside without someone spitting at me." I wanted to feel bad. I really did. But I remembered sitting in that salon chair, eyes full of tears I didn't choose. I remembered the way he called me the asset in that brand email. "You were warned," I said quietly. His expression turned hollow. "I just wanted to matter. Just once." "You mattered," I said. "Before the likes and followers? You mattered to me." He sat down heavily in a chair. "I don't know how to come back from this." I paused. Then, choosing my words carefully, said, "You don't come back. You move forward. But you start by listening." To who, he asked. "To the people you hurt." He looked up. "Are you one of them?" "Yes," I said. "The first." For once, he didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He just nodded. The next morning, he left the house. He didn't say where he was going. Didn't take a camera. He just walked out the front door with a coat and a notebook in hand. For a moment, I thought he might try to run hide from the mess he made. But 2 days later, he returned. With a letter. He handed it to me without a word. I opened it after he left the room. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs. Apologizing. Not just for filming me without consent, but for making me feel disposable. For seeing my life as content instead of history. For forgetting that the woman he was editing was the one who stayed up with him through every fever, every nightmare, every heartbreak. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it was a beginning. Later that week, Lena sent me a clip from the upcoming documentary, just a 30-second preview. It opened with my voice. There's a silence that comes with aging people stop asking you who you are. They just assume. This is my answer to that silence. I watched it twice, and then once more. And I realized, this time the story was mine. The documentary dropped on a Thursday morning, and by Friday night my world was on fire again, but not in the way Eli had set it aflame. This time the flames weren't made of comments and thumbnails and monetized grief. This time it was warmth. Light. A chorus of voices saying, "We see you now." Lena had titled it, "The Story They Never Let Her Tell." In the opening frame, I sat at my own dining table, soft, natural light on my face, no music, no makeup, just me. And I spoke about the way age had rendered me invisible long before Eli picked up a camera. About how women like me fade from conversations, from headlines, from dinner tables, and how suddenly I became visible again only through someone else's distortion. The internet didn't just listen, it stopped. People shared it across platforms, not with mockery, but with awe. This woman's voice is what social media has been missing. Forget influencers. Let's hear more from her. I watched this and then called my mother for the first time in 2 years. The numbers didn't matter. The sincerity did. I received emails, invitations, even a handwritten letter from a literature professor in Oregon who said she'd shown the documentary to her class and started a unit on unseen narratives. And just like that, the thing Eli had taken from me, my agency, returned. But not everyone was thrilled. 2 days after the documentary aired, I found Eli sitting on the porch, his shoulders hunched, cigarette smoldering between 2 fingers he never used to stain with smoke. He didn't look up when I sat beside him. "You're famous now," he said bitterly. "No," I said. "I'm visible." He scoffed. "What's the difference?" "The difference is this time it's me telling the story." He was quiet for a while. The late afternoon sun painted long lines across the porch railing. In the distance, a neighbor's dog barked and kids rode bikes through the cul-de-sac. "I watched it," he admitted eventually. "The whole thing?" I said nothing. I didn't expect it to hit me the way it did. Still, I waited. "You weren't cruel," he continued. "You didn't even say my name." "That was intentional," I replied. "This story wasn't about blaming you. It was about finding me again." He turned to look at me. "So why does it feel like I'm the one being erased now?" I met his gaze. "Because for once it's not about you." The truth of that hit him hard. I saw it settle in his posture, in the way his shoulders deflated. Eli had built his life on being the center of videos, of narratives, of attention. He didn't know how to stand in the wings. "You don't think I'm capable of changing," he murmured. "I think you've confused changing with pivoting." He blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means every time you get caught, you rebrand. You don't reflect. You reinvent." He nodded slowly, the insult not missed. "But this isn't about your channel anymore," I said. "This is about the man you want to be when no one's watching." A long silence. Then he asked the question I'd known would come. "Do you hate me?" I turned my head to look at the garden where my husband once planted marigolds that refused to bloom, where Eli once buried his pet turtle with tearful reverence. "No," I said. "I don't hate you." He exhaled. "Thank God. But I don't trust you either." His expression tightened. "And that," I added, "is going to take time. And proof." "What kind of proof?" he asked. I thought for a long moment before answering. "Live a life that isn't curated. Do something good and don't film it. Tell the truth even if it costs you. Earn back the right to be believed." He leaned back in the chair, nodding like he finally heard what I was saying. That's fair. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest he'd come. Later that week, a former subscriber of Eli's emailed me a screenshot of a new post he'd written on Medium. The title read, "What I Took from My Mother and What I Hope to Give Back." It wasn't performative. It wasn't monetized. Just a quiet 1,000-word essay where he laid bare the manipulation, the guilt, the addictive pull of virality, and the way it had severed his moral compass. He admitted to it all, even the parts I hadn't shared. He ended it with, "If she lets me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. Not for clicks, for her." I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and cried. Not because I forgave him, not yet, but because I could finally see a path. The next evening we had dinner at the table, just the two of us. No cameras, no pretense. We talked about the soup recipe, about the documentary crew, about my old job at the library and whether I might go back to volunteering. He didn't touch his phone once. At one point he said, I forgot how much you love poetry." I smiled. "You used to bring me poems on construction paper when you were little." "I remember," he said. "You kept them in that drawer under the old stereo." "I still have them." That night I opened the drawer. There they were. Crayon scribbles, misspelled declarations of love from a boy who used to look at me like I was the whole world. I closed the drawer gently, not to preserve the papers, but to preserve the feeling. Because while I knew Eli might relapse into performance again, I also knew I had changed. I'd grown a spine beneath my sorrow. He could never take my story from me again. It started with a podcast. Not a huge one, just a quiet show hosted by a woman named Naomi, whose voice carried the softness of someone who had survived more than she spoke about. Naomi reached out through Dana, asking if I'd be willing to speak about digital exploitation from within families, a phrase I'd never heard before but immediately recognized. At first I hesitated. "I'm not a speaker," I told her. "You're a truth teller," she replied. "And we need more of those." So I said yes. The recording took place over Zoom late one rainy afternoon. Naomi welcomed me like an old friend gave me time to settle, to breathe. There were no flashing lights, no countdowns, no 3, 2, 1, go. Just space. We talked for over an hour, about aging, about being erased, about how love can rot when fed with entitlement and unmet expectations. I told her I used to think betrayal looked like screaming, but for me it looked like a camera lens pretending to care. She asked if I forgave him. I paused, then said, "Forgiveness isn't a gift I owe him. It's a boundary I offer myself." The episode aired a week later. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. The people who found it were the ones who needed it most. Mothers, daughters, caretakers, estranged sons, invisible women. The inbox filled slowly, gently. One message read, "I've been silent for 20 years. You gave me permission to speak." Another, "My daughter does this too, turns my grief into content. I thought I was alone." I began replying, not with long lectures, just with acknowledgments. "Thank you for sharing. I hear you. You matter." And each time I typed those words, I felt them land somewhere deeper inside me, like roots, finally touching water. Back home, Eli was still quiet. He'd stopped filming entirely, a silence that felt almost sacred. He spent more time in the backyard now, digging up old soil, repotting my neglected herbs, planting new flowers where my husband's marigolds once struggled. "I thought I'd try lavender this time," he said one morning, dirt under his fingernails. "It won't bloom unless you're patient," I replied. He gave me a small, sad smile. "That's kind of the point." Every so often, he'd ask a question that surprised me. "Do you remember that field trip I skipped in 10th grade?" "Yes. You said you had the flu." I lied. I was afraid. I didn't want to go without you. Other times, the guilt would crawl back out of him like smoke from a smoldering ember. I still have that first check he confessed one night. The one from the brand deal. I never spent it. It's in a drawer. Why, I asked. Because I knew what it cost. I didn't ask what he would do with it. That was his reckoning to carry. Meanwhile, offers kept coming, not for reality shows, not for sensational features, but thoughtful ones. Panel discussions, virtual conferences, women's groups who wanted me to speak about truth, family, and boundaries. The phrase digital boundaries with adult children started appearing more often. I wasn't a therapist, I wasn't a scholar, but I had lived something real. And I had come out on the other side. So I said yes. Not to everything, just to the ones that felt like healing. I remember one panel in particular, a conversation with two other women. One had been recorded during her chemo treatments by a niece chasing raw content. The other had been filmed at her husband's funeral by her son, who titled it, "Saying Goodbye to the Strongest Man I Ever Knew." Neither had given consent. Both had been devoured by the audience of the internet. When it was my turn to speak, I said, "We taught them how to hold a spoon, how to button their coats, how to use their words. But no one taught us how to stop them from turning us into stories we didn't write." And I saw heads nod. I saw tears fall. And I knew I wasn't just healing myself anymore. I was planting something larger. Back at home, Eli had started volunteering at a local shelter quietly, anonymously. No filming, no hashtags, just showing up to serve soup-fold blankets, clean bathrooms. He didn't tell me at first. I found out from the shelter manager who emailed me after the documentary. "Your son's been coming in. We didn't recognize him at first. He doesn't talk about what happened, just does the work." I didn't bring it up to him right away. I let him have that. But one night I walked into the kitchen and left a pot of stew on the stove, his favorite, lentils and thyme. I left a sticky note that simply said, "For after your shift." No signature. He'd know it was from me. And when I came down the next morning, the pot was empty, washed, and drying in the rack. No words needed. We weren't fixed. But we were building, slowly, brick by honest brick. I found the envelope on the kitchen counter one morning. Cream-colored thick stock printed with gold-embossed lettering. At first glance, it looked like a wedding invitation. But when I opened it, my stomach sank. It was an offer not for me, for Eli. A national network was producing a new limited series, Redemption, The Influencers Who Lost Everything. They wanted him to be the central guest for an upcoming episode. The letter called him a perfect case study of public downfall and moral recovery. It praised his arc. It used words like bravery, visibility, and opportunity, all wrapped in a neat package of performative absolution. I stood there holding the paper in one hand, coffee cooling in the other, trying to slow my breathing. I heard him come in behind me. "You saw it," he said quietly. I turned around, holding the letter out. "Did you say yes?" "No," he said, "not yet." "Are you going to?" He looked down at the floor, toeing the tile like a child caught in something shameful. "I don't know." "You do know," I said. "You just don't want to admit it." He sighed. "It's not what you think. They said it wouldn't be a fluff piece. They want me to talk about accountability, about how I changed." "No," I said. "They want to own your change. Package it, sell it, turn it into entertainment. Again." He leaned against the counter, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets. "But what if I want people to hear my side? Then write it, say it, but don't monetize it. It's not about the money." "Yes, it is." His jaw tightened. "You don't think I deserve to be heard. I think you haven't earned the right to turn your apology into a product." He flinched. "So what, am I supposed to disappear forever?" "No," I said. "You're supposed to live a life that's no longer performed." He looked at me, then really looked. I thought I was changing. I thought I was doing the work. "You were," I said. "But this is the back door. This is the shortcut. This is you crawling back into the same house with a new coat of paint." "I don't want to hurt you again," he whispered. "Then don't." He went quiet. I took a deep breath, softened my tone. "You said in your Medium post that you'd spend the rest of your life making it right. That starts with saying no to the stage." He nodded slowly. "I'll turn it down," he said. "Not for me," I replied. "For yourself." He hesitated. "It's just hard. When they come offering attention, it feels like oxygen." "I know," I said. "But you've been breathing their air too long. It's time you learned how to breathe without it." That night, he wrote the producers an email. He let me read it before sending. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm declining. My story is not a product. I've caused enough harm by trying to narrate other people's pain. I want to spend this chapter listening, not performing." He didn't ask for my approval. He just hit send. The next day, we worked in the garden together, side by side in silence. He planted lavender. I repotted the basil. We barely spoke, but something passed between us anyway. Something warmer than forgiveness and quieter than reconciliation. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was the beginning of something gentler. That evening, I made tea and handed him a mug. He looked at it, then at me, and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I did," I said. "A little." He smiled faintly. "Fair. But I'm trying again," I added. "Because I see a spark in you. Something real." He nodded. "I'm still figuring out who I am when no one's watching." That's a good place to start. Later that night, I opened my email and found another message from Naomi's podcast. They wanted to do a follow-up. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keys. This time, I would talk not about betrayal or survival, but about rebuilding. Boundaries, quiet victories, the slow daily work of becoming whole again. I wrote back one word: yes. Because this story still wasn't over. But it was mine now. I didn't expect the call. Not after everything had begun to settle, after the cameras had left, after Eli had turned down the network, after I had found my rhythm again. But healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. And that spiral took a sharp turn the day the hospital called me. It was late afternoon. I was pulling a tray of lemon scones from the oven when my cell phone buzzed. Unknown number. I nearly let it go to voicemail. But something in my chest tightened and I picked up. "Is this Margaret Ellison?" "Yes." "This is St. James Emergency. Your son Elijah has been admitted. He collapsed on site at a volunteer shift. He's stable now, but we'd recommend you come in." My body moved before my brain caught up. I left the scones cooling on the stove, grabbed my coat and keys, and drove through 5 red lights, hands trembling, heart pounding in my ears. When I got to the hospital, they had him in a room in the corner of the ward, separated by a curtain. He looked so small. Not physically, he was still tall, broad-shouldered, but curled in on himself in that bed, arms folded over his chest, eyes shut tight like he was afraid to see me. The nurse looked at me gently. "Dehydration. Exhaustion. We ran blood work and scans. He's okay physically, but he hasn't been eating. Not properly." He mentioned trouble sleeping, mood swings. "It may be time to consider speaking with someone." I nodded slowly, then stepped into the room. He didn't open his eyes, but he knew. "You came," he said. "Of course I came. I thought maybe—" His voice cracked. "After everything, I didn't know if you'd want to." I pulled the chair closer to his bed and sat down. "I didn't come because you're my son," I said. "I came because you're hurting. And I know that pain too well to ignore it in someone I love." He opened his eyes then. They were bloodshot, rimmed with salt. "I didn't think it would hit me like this." "The silence." He nodded. "It's louder than the applause ever was." I reached out, and this time he didn't flinch. I rested my hand over his, not squeezing, just there. He took a breath. "I've been trying to do things right. But every time I'm alone, I hear the old voice in my head. This would make a great video." "I know," I said. "Undoing that wiring takes time. I don't trust myself yet." "You don't have to, not yet. You just have to keep choosing differently." He looked at me, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I saw no hunger in his eyes. No need to be validated. No need to perform. Just a boy, my boy, looking for a place to be safe again. "They offered me a book deal last week," he said quietly. My stomach twisted. "He saw it." I said no. "I didn't even tell you because I was scared you'd think I was slipping again." I didn't say anything. Just waited. "I want to write, Mom. But not about this. Not about us. I want to write stories that aren't true. Fiction. Fiction can't hurt anybody." I smiled faintly. "Fiction can hurt. But at least everyone knows the rules." He laughed, a real one, soft and weary. "You think I can do that? Make something good?" I looked at him. "I think you've always had something good in you. You just buried it under too much noise." He nodded slowly. "Maybe it's time I learn how to write in silence." We sat there for a while. No cameras, no social media. Just two people in a quiet hospital room where the truth didn't need to be monetized to matter. He was discharged that night, and for once he asked if he could stay with me for a few days. "I don't want to be alone," he said. "Okay," I replied. We made tea together that evening. He chopped herbs for dinner. I let him sleep in the spare room with the door open, something he used to do as a child when he had nightmares. That first night, he didn't say a word before bed. The second night, he said, "I'm sorry again." And I said, "I know." The third night, he brought me a story. Just a few pages handwritten. A fable of sorts. About a bird that stole the voice of a lion only to discover its own wings had stopped working. It was poetic. A little clumsy, but honest. I cried when I read it. He didn't post it anywhere. He just folded it, placed it in the drawer beneath the old stereo, the same one where I kept his childhood poems. And it stayed there, not as content, but as proof. A week later, I did the second episode of Naomi's podcast. This time she titled it, "When the Camera Turns Off, Rebuilding with Boundaries." We talked about guilt, about repair, about how real healing has no hashtags. At the end, Naomi asked, "If you could speak to the version of yourself sitting on that bench in the first video, the one in the coat, holding the paper cup, what would you say?" I paused, then answered, "I'd say, you're not invisible. You're just waiting for the noise to die down so your voice can rise." The comments were quiet, thoughtful. No emojis, no screaming caps. Just recognition, a kind of collective exhale from people who had been turned into someone else's story and were learning how to write their own. That night, I sat on the porch with Eli. He was sketching characters for a new story. I was knitting, and for the first time, the silence between us felt full, not empty. Like a beginning. Like something real. Like life after the camera. Spring came slowly that year, like someone testing the lock before opening the door. First the light softened, then the air warmed, then the flowers bloomed, and with it I began again. Not as someone's mother, not as a victim of viral fame, but as Margaret Ellison. I had received an invitation from a local community center, a small speaking engagement for their Women's Voices series. They wanted me to open the season, not because I was famous, they assured me, but because I was honest. The theme was narratives we don't consent to. I wrote my speech slowly, one sentence a day at first, not out of hesitation, out of reverence. Every word felt like laying a brick in the foundation of something I had earned. When the day came, I wore blue. My late husband always said I looked strongest in blue, like a storm cloud that knows its worth, he used to joke. The room was small, maybe 40 chairs, but everyone was filled. Women of all ages. A few husbands. A quiet hum of anticipation, not for spectacle, for truth. I stood at the podium with my notes trembling in my hands. Then I looked up, and I saw them. Not an audience. "Witnesses," I began. "When you are erased, you learn to whisper. When your story is hijacked, you learn to disappear. But eventually, if you're lucky, you remember the sound of your own name." I told them everything. Not the viral version, not the cleaned up one, the middle parts, the quiet betrayals. The day I found my own face in a thumbnail. The night I decided I would no longer participate in my own erasure. They listened. They didn't interrupt. They didn't film. And when I finished, they stood. Not out of pity, out of recognition. That evening, Eli picked me up. He didn't ask how it went. He just opened the car door for me and said, "You hungry?" We went for pho at the place he loved as a teenager. He slurped noodles like he used to. I dabbed at my mouth with a napkin, watching him with something like curiosity. He wasn't performing anymore. That was the most beautiful change. "I saw something today," he said between bites. "Oh!" A guy filming his girlfriend crying in the park, trying to get the angle right. She kept saying, "Can you not?" And he kept saying, "It'll get views." My stomach twisted. "What did you do?" I asked. He looked up. "Nothing. Nothing." I wanted to shout at him. I wanted to grab the phone. But I realized it wasn't about me. Not this time. I couldn't fix it. But I could learn from it. I nodded slowly. "That's growth," I said. He smirked. "Feels a lot like guilt." Sometimes they overlap. He went quiet for a moment, then said, I've been writing more. Not posting. Just for me. Can I read something? Soon, he said. I want to finish it first. Back at the house, he showed me his new project not on a screen but in a box. Sketches. Handwritten pages. A binder labeled Rough Draft Real Me. I didn't read it. I just touched the cover gently. That night, we were interrupted. There was a knock at the door, not aggressive, hesitant. I opened it and saw a woman in her late 30s holding a phone in one hand and a trembling toddler in the other. I'm sorry, she said. I know this is weird. But, are you the woman from the documentary? I didn't confirm. I didn't have to. She stepped back, embarrassed. Sorry. I watched it. And I've been trying to get out of something similar with my brother. He uses our mother the same way yours. She stopped herself, glancing at the toddler. I just wanted to say thank you. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, would you like to come in? Her eyes widened. Really? We have tea. She hesitated, then stepped inside. Eli stayed upstairs, quiet, respectful. The woman's name was Kayla. Her daughter's name was Mari. We talked for over an hour, about how it feels to be gaslit by family, about how shame makes you silent, about how some wounds don't bleed, they fade you out pixel by pixel. Before she left, she asked if she could hug me. I said yes. As they disappeared down the sidewalk, I felt a new kind of weight in my chest. Not burden, purpose. This wasn't just about reclaiming my voice. It was about making space for others to do the same. 2 days later, Eli knocked on my door. It was early, before coffee, before light. He held the binder in his arms. I finished it, he said. I sat up. Already. I've been working on it since before the hospital. I just didn't know how to end it. And now, he smiled, a small, tired smile. Now I know that endings don't happen when the story goes viral. They happen when the person telling it is finally ready to stop pretending. I held the binder like a gift. Inside were 12 short stories. Fiction, yes, but full of recognizable shadows. A boy who chases applause until he forgets how to sleep. A woman who becomes an online myth until she burns her own legend to the ground. A garden that refuses to bloom until the liar who planted it starts telling the truth. I didn't speak until I finished. Then I looked up and said, it's beautiful. Even the messy parts. Especially the messy parts. He sat beside me on the couch, looking at nothing in particular. You think people like me deserve second chances? He asked softly. I think people like you need to earn them. And have I? I didn't answer. I just reached for his hand. That was answer enough. That afternoon, I returned the binder with a note inside. Not a critique, not an edit, just a message. Tell your truth, even if it doesn't trend, even if no one claps. Tell it because you've finally learned to listen. The local library reopened its community workshop program in early June, and the moment I saw the flyer, I knew I'd say yes. Memoir and Memory, a writing circle for women, 50 plus. I wasn't planning to become a teacher again, but something about the phrasing, the gentle invitation, the acknowledgement that our voices deepen with age, not fade, pulled me in like a tide. I emailed the coordinator and offered to lead it. She replied within the hour we'd be honored. The workshop took place in the back room of the library, a little sunlit space filled with folding chairs and the smell of paperbacks and peppermint tea. We met every Thursday evening, 10 women, myself included, notebooks in our laps, sharing fragments of ourselves like we were stitching a quilt together out of silence. There was Linda, who hadn't written since her husband died 6 years ago. Gloria, who was trying to document her grandmother's immigration story. Miriam, whose adult children only spoke to her through group texts. And there was me. I didn't tell them about the documentary. Not at first. I just said I lost control of my story once. I'm here to reclaim it. That was enough. Our first prompt was simple. Write about the moment you realized someone was watching you without really seeing you. The room filled with the scratch of pens. When we read our pages aloud, it was like we were standing together on a rooftop during a thunderstorm, vulnerable, electric, brave. One week, I read a passage about the first time Eli posted my face without telling me. No names, no drama. Just the feeling of being flattened into a caption. When I finished, the room was silent for a long time. Then Gloria said, "I think we all know that feeling even if we've never been filmed." The others nodded, because that was the truth. I had come to understand this wasn't just my story. It was ours. A collective ache. A quiet rebellion. Later, as I packed up, the librarian slipped me a note. "You should publish your story. Really publish." I smiled. Maybe. At home, Eli had started sleeping better. He wasn't on social media anymore. He'd deleted the accounts, not just deactivated them. When I asked if he missed it, he shook his head. "No, I feel like I've been unhooked from something." He was freelancing now, copy editing, designing little logos for small businesses. He'd even written a short fiction piece that was accepted by a quiet, reputable online journal. Nothing viral, nothing sensational, just words shaped with care. When I read it, I nearly cried. It was called "The Woman on the Porch." She wasn't me, but she could have been. One afternoon, I found a small manila envelope in the mailbox. Inside was a paperback galley, his story published with a handful of others in a chapbook called Unspectacular Miracles. He hadn't told me. He just left a sticky note inside, no hashtags. Just healing. I placed the book beside the stereo, right next to the drawer of childhood poems. That night over dinner, I told him about the writing circle. His eyes lit up. "You're teaching again." "Not exactly, just listening, guiding." He stirred his soup. "Funny. I always thought you'd end up writing something someday." "Maybe I will." "You should." I looked at him for a long moment. "Would it bother you if I told the full story one day?" He didn't hesitate. "No," he said. "Not if it's yours to tell." There was no tension in his voice, no ownership, no fear, just quiet acceptance. The peace I had once begged for had finally arrived, and it had nothing to do with resolution. It had everything to do with boundaries, with truth, with voice. The next Thursday, I stayed behind after the workshop. Alone in the library room, I opened my old leather notebook and started something new. Not a journal, not a revenge story, a manuscript. The first line came easy. "My name is Margaret Ellison." I disappeared in a video and reappeared in the silence that followed. I wrote for an hour. When I left the library, the sky was pink with dusk. Outside, Eli was waiting in the car. He didn't ask what I'd written, and I didn't offer. That was the beauty of our new life. The space between us was no longer filled with expectations. Just presence. "Dinner?" he asked. "Only if you're cooking." He laughed. "Deal." As we drove home, the wind carried the scent of lavender from our own backyard, blooming finally. Not for views, not for sympathy, but because the soil had finally been made ready. There's a strange kind of peace that settles in when you stop waiting for applause. It doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like stillness, like your soul finally unclenched its fists and exhaled. I sit on the porch now most evenings. Same old wooden chair, same chipped table beside me. But everything around me feels new, not because the world changed, but because I finally did. Eli joins me sometimes. He brings 2 mugs of tea. One for him, one for me. He never picks up his phone. We talk about small things, soup recipes, book endings, the stubborn lavender that finally bloomed in the garden. Sometimes we say nothing at all. And that silence, once heavy with everything we hadn't said now, feels like the safest language we share. He still writes. Sometimes I read what he writes, sometimes I don't. And he never pushes. That's our unspoken agreement that creativity doesn't owe explanation, only truth. As for me, I keep teaching the memoir circle at the library. We sit in that back room with our pens and our paper and our complicated memories, and we give each other permission to write the things we were told were too quiet to matter. I haven't published my full story yet, but I will. Not for revenge, not for vindication. Just to set it down in the world so that if someone else finds themselves flattened into someone else's fiction, they'll know there's a way back. Because if I've learned anything, it's this. You don't need millions of views to be seen. You don't need a trending hashtag to reclaim your life. You just need the courage to stop performing and the patience to remember who you were before the noise. That woman, the one on the bench holding a paper cup while her son filmed pity, she's gone now. Not lost. Transformed. She lives here in me. in the softness of my voice when I speak without apology, in the strength of my spine when I say no and mean it, in the warmth I offer without being asked to perform. I don't need a camera. I don't need edits. I have my own lens now, one shaped by truth. And it shows me everything. Eli's mistakes, my silence, our long broken bridge back to each other. It shows me forgiveness not as a one-time act, but as a daily choice. It shows me that motherhood doesn't end when your child betrays you, but it changes. It tightens, then loosens again if you let it. And above all, it shows me that healing is quiet, but powerful. So if you're out there, if someone turned your pain into their performance, if someone turned your life into a caption, know this. You can take it back. You can start over. You can become louder than the lie. And not because you shouted, but because you finally chose to speak. Thank you for listening to my story. If it stirred something in you, I'd love to hear it. Share your story in the comments. You never know who needs to read it. And don't forget to subscribe to Grace's Truth for more voices reclaiming what was taken. Because healing is contagious, and truth always finds its way home.